Russia's 70-year-old assault trucks got wiped out in eastern Ukraine. Drones swarmed the museum-grade GAZ-69 trucks. All along the front line, vehicle losses are spurring a swift de-mechanization of the Russian army. A few weeks after first appearing in significant numbers along the front line in Ukraine, Russian GAZ-69 trucks, museum pieces from the 1950s, seem to have participated in their first direct assault on Ukrainian positions. The Thursday assault outside Bilohorivka, at the juncture of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblasts in eastern Ukraine, ended badly for at least one of the 3,500-pound, four-wheel drive GAZ-69s, which rolled off the assembly line at the Molotov plant in Moscow sometime between 1952 and 1972. The trucks are totally unarmored except for the anti-drone cages some Russian troops weld onto them. The GAZ-69 was struck by a first-person view drone from the Ukrainian Abwehr Grupa drone team, part of the 81st Air Mobile Brigade. The rest of the civilian-style vehicles in the platoon-size column, potentially including additional GAZ-69s, also came under attack. No one arrived, no one reached Ukrainian positions. The best-protected Russian assault group struggled across the mine-seeded, artillery-pocked, drone-patrolled front line of Russia's 38-month-long wider war on Ukraine. Lightly protected assault groups and civilian trucks, all-terrain vehicles and motorcycles tend to fare even worse. But more and more Russian regiments are riding in civilian vehicles as Russia's losses of purpose-made combat vehicles exceed 20,000. And that helps to explain why the numerically superior Russian force in eastern Ukraine, which may number more than 500,000, has been struggling to gain ground. Despite holding the advantage along much of the front line, Russia's winter campaign yielded limited results, indicating Ukraine's situation is not dire. That doesn't mean the better equipped or luckier Russian assault groups won't advance a short distance here or there.
There it is!
Indeed, Russian regiments gained some ground south of Bilohorivka in recent days, according to the Ukrainian Center for Defense Strategies. It does mean that, overall, the Russian army in Ukraine is increasingly ill-equipped for a major offensive, and likewise ill-equipped to exploit any localized breakthrough resulting from a successful assault. What was once one of the world's great mechanized armies is de-mechanizing at a rapid pace. Meanwhile, Russia launched a new offensive into Ukraine, attempting to cut off the remaining Ukrainian forces at Kursk. However, as their dead piled up along the border, it quickly became clear that any hope of the Russians launching their own offensive was far-fetched. Initially, Russian forces attempted to overrun the Ukrainian forces by directly attacking the contingent as they retreated from Kursk. However, the Ukrainians had established strong defensive lines at Gogolevka in Rubinshina to secure their withdrawal, forcing the Russians to fight for 3 days for the small settlement of Rubinshina, which significantly delayed the Russian advance. As it became clear that an attempt to invade Ukraine directly would lead to further failure, the Russians decided to take a completely different approach. The Russians continued to attempt to encircle and eliminate the remaining Ukrainian contingents at Kursk and Sumy, even though the bulk of the forces had already retreated. In order to claim victory, the Russians decided to launch an offensive into the Sumy region itself. The main focus of the Russian effort was to capture Novenka and Basivka and gain direct fire control of the Sumy-Sudza highway, which remained the main Ukrainian supply route for their drive northeast. However, the Russians suffered heavy losses. The heavy losses suffered at Kursk severely weakened their ability to launch further attacks into Ukrainian territory. According to various estimates, Russian forces suffered up to 55,000 casualties during 7.5 months of heavy fighting and several failed counterattack attempts at Kursk. It is worth noting that these losses far exceeded the initial deployment of 50,000 troops that Russia initially moved to Kursk to repel the Ukrainian attack, as Russia had to move large reserves from other sectors of the front, including wounded soldiers, as well as rely on North Korea to eventually dislodge the Ukrainians. Ukrainian sources also report that Russia has lost up to 2,100 vehicles at Kursk, including over 750 armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles, and tanks, resulting in a significant deficit in Russian forces' armored reserves at Kursk. Although the exact number of Russian forces remaining combat-ready in this sector is unknown, it is clear that they do not have the capability to launch a follow-up offensive to encircle part of the Ukrainian Kursk force. As a result, geolocation footage shows that here too, Russian troops were forced to cross open fields to attack Ukrainian positions on foot, in better vehicles, and even on electric scooters. Despite the lack of adequate vehicles, the Russians continued to launch attacks, hoping to overwhelm the Ukrainians and achieve their objectives through sheer numbers.